Emma and Tom Talk Teaching, a podcast about all things education presented by Emma O'Dooher, Sian Wickersham and Tom Breeze. Christmas Special 2025.
Ah, yes, the bells, the bells. Sian, it's your first time hearing the Christmas bells in the mix.
And I've made it. I've made it into the titles.
Your face.
Oh my goodness, that was a lovely surprise. I haven't made it onto the poster yet, though.
Oh, we'll have to rectify that, won't we? We'll have to get on the blower to Beth Blandford and see if she'll do a revision for us.
Yes.
Nadolig Llawen, Merry Christmas, everybody. You've made it. We've made it. It's it's another Christmas special coming at you, but this time with three of us. So you thought it was too long before. It's probably going to be extra specially long this time around.
We still cut it down. We used to do 12 items, and once I think did we break the 2-hour mark one year? I think we did. At which point we decided self-indulgence, even at Christmas, had gone a little bit too far. So I think we've cut it down to 9. So 3 each.
So it's not the 12 days of Christmas anymore.
It's the slimmed down, slimming jab version, 9 days.
So as usual, we've each got some offerings, some light, some education adjacent, but something to kind of keep you going as you work your way through those Christmas chocolates and other nice things to eat in this weird in-between time, that weird in-between period, Sian, between Christmas Day and New Year's Day.
Twixmas.
That's the one. Yes. It had a name.
When you're so desperate for entertainment, you'll listen to us for a long, long time. That's how bad it's got.
Right, so we're going to get straight in. And I think, Sian, you've got the first offering.
I do. And I'm going to say with my offering that it starts off dry and then we get increasingly ridiculous.
Brilliant.
As we go through.
Like Christmas itself.
Exactly, just like Christmas. So I want to start off with a full-on education thing. Apologies, everyone. But do you guys know there's a new writing framework that's been released in England?
I have heard of this.
Yeah,
I haven't
so
seen it.
Specifically primary schools. So, I'm bringing a little primary flavour to the Christmas podcast. And I want to read an article from the TES, which sort of summarises it a little bit, and then a critique of it. But then I've got some slight questions about the critique. So I think there's a couple of points in here around how things are received often. So let me kick off. It's called The New Writing Framework, and this is Megan Dixon, who's an associate tutor at Sheffield Hallam University. It says, the oversimplified writing framework sidelines the key message. While there is much to applaud in the new primary writing framework, it deals with the most critical part of writing as an afterthought, argues Megan Dixon. I'm reading an extract here. Let's start with the process of assembling the document. All credit to the DFE for including a full list of those who have been involved. This level of transparency is important, but it presents a couple of challenges. Firstly, can you really say that something represents the consensus of research when few academics have been involved? Probably not. Secondly, some commercial interests were involved, but others were not. I can't help but wonder how those publishers and writing training producers were selected, and how those who were not asked to comment are feeling about this. Finally, where are the voices of the frontline teachers and the pupils themselves? Perhaps the next iteration could draw upon the skills, knowledge and expertise of those not in leadership, consulting or management positions and include more voices of primary children and teachers. That would be truly remarkable. Another challenge is the length of the document itself. There are 150 pages, 100 pages if you exclude the appendices, of statements organised around themes. It is a document of 2 halves with a lot of repetition. The first half emphasises the importance of transcription and the explicit teaching of sentences. Children should be taught to be accurate, to be effective spellers using dictation. This part mimics the reading framework, which is another document kind of based on phonics that's released in England, with a focus on teaching letters, then words and sentences. So far, so simple. In contrast, the second, stronger half shifts to a broader, wider focus on composition and the process of writing as a means of communication. There is useful and actionable advice on the practicalities of helping children develop the skills to be able to express their own wants, needs, wishes, thoughts, and ideas. Teaching the process of writing, composing, drafting, editing and publishing helps children wrestle with writing, and it is positive that this section references the powerful research published by American psychologists Karen Harris and Steve Graham, among others. But there lies a challenge in trying to align these two sections together. Writing is not simple, and the simple view of writing that has been adopted does not do justice to the complexity of the process. Models of writing with a strong research pedigree suggest that the metacognitive processes a child can bring to writing, identifying the purpose and audience for a text, goal setting, monitoring progress, evaluating success, are incredibly important at any age. Motivation to write starts with a meaningful purpose for writing and an appropriate audience. These aspects are mentioned as afterthoughts rather than positioned as central to being an effective writer. Perhaps this is where the research is helpful. The next challenge is to understand how, as a leader, you should navigate this document and what will be expected from you. Is it a practice guide that you can use in a pick and mix fashion to supplement and refine what is happening in the classroom? Perhaps the excellent section on supporting pupils with additional needs will be able to prompt powerful conversations among staff and help the 28% of pupils who did not achieve age-related expectations in writing in Year 6 this year. Is it a summary of the research about the development of writing to use as a reflective tool and as a prompt for discussion with colleagues? Or is it an assemblage of practices that hint at what Ofsted will be looking for in classrooms, and you should ensure they are implemented as soon as possible? Some guidance on the guidance would be helpful. Finally, I wonder if this is what would be most of help for the education sector at the moment. What both the reading and writing frameworks have in common is the conviction that spoken language development is central to reading and writing development. So why have we not started there? And then Michael Rosen has also weighed in. So I'm just going to read a couple of his points, because he does rather go off on one at the end of this about the grammar of the report itself, as is his wont to often do when the DFE release anything. So Michael Rosen, the new writing framework, first thoughts. I've had a quick look at the new writing framework. Here are my first observations. 1. Don't come to this document for inspiration, excitement, or fun. Right?
I love it.
It's classic. I was going to read this and then ask you to guess who'd written it, because I reckon you probably could.
I would have guessed him, definitely.
The theme that is repeated over and over again is that writing is hard and can't be done in a joyful way. 2. There is a strong element in the document that writing comes about through building blocks. To be fair, it's not the only element in the document, but it's the one that's easiest to get hold of, and I suggest the one most seductive for a particular mechanical way of teaching and running a writing curriculum. 3. Only one kind of writing seems to be discussed, extended prose written in standard English. This is a misrepresentation of what writing is. Here are some examples of writing that is not always extended prose. Poetry, song lyrics, film scripts, play scripts, dialogue in novels, ads on billboards, the scripts for ads we see on TV, notes on PowerPoints, lists, notes for speeches that we might give, a lot of rules, instructions, directions that are written up in public places, a good deal of writing in the digital sphere, text, chat room chat, comments thread, post on social media, etc., slogans, titles, PowerPoint presentations, proverbs and idioms that are self-enclosed. It's worth remembering that a lot of this is the daily language of the modern world, and being good at it is a highly commercial skill to have. You could argue that by schools not helping children to write in these ways, we are depriving them of marketability. 4. There is a sad irony that a document on writing hardly talks about how we might convey feelings, tension, excitement, lyricism, horror, fear, intrigue, etc. in writing. It's as if learning how to write is an exercise in being correct, or becoming more and more correct. And 5, which is the last one that I'll read, don't come to this document looking for ways in which reading exciting and engrossing books is the best platform for talk and writing. Don't come to it looking for a raft of exciting ways in which we can use what's great in books as triggers for children to express ideas and feelings triggered by what they read. So I read all this and I was like, oh gosh, yeah, it does sound, And then I went and read the document and I thought, actually, I don't know, there's often a lot of critique, isn't there, of documents? But let me just read you a little section and see if this kind of rings true here. So this now is a section from the writing framework. While developing foundational skills builds much needed confidence, purposeful and enjoyable writing experiences can also foster their motivation. Too often, pupils learn to write for the circular purpose of learning to write and find little personal purpose or value in it. Writing tasks that are interesting, challenging, and meaningful can motivate pupils to view written communication as useful, important, enjoyable, and fulfilling. Giving them opportunities to write collaboratively with their peers can also be motivating. Ideally, pupils will be interested in the topic they are writing about because they have knowledge of it, perhaps because they've been taught about the Romans or because they are writing about their granny's cooking. Motivation can be improved if the composition has a goal. For example, to persuade school leaders to change a policy, writing to local celebrities, asking them to visit their school, or writing about concerns such as climate change. But sometimes pupils are motivated simply by the challenge and joy of learning. Research indicates that young people can enjoy writing and be more motivated to write when they can make choices about it. The choices differ by age and stage of learning. While developing writers will need scaffolds and support to write accurately and confidently, they can still have the agency to make choices within those structures. That is about what they want to write and how they are going to express it. Even when composing a single sentence, pupils can choose which words to communicate their ideas, the subject they want to focus on, perhaps which grammatical structures to deploy to create the desired effect, and more. Pupils may also choose to write about books they are enjoying outside of school, or write in the style of those books. Choosing to read and write for enjoyment develops autonomy and fluency and provides further opportunities for practice. So that's my little offering here. I think it's interesting, isn't it, how different frameworks and things are put out there. I'm going to say, full disclosure, I actually quite like the writing framework. I think it's quite clear. I think it would be quite helpful as a teacher in the classroom. It wouldn't be the only thing that I would use to teach writing, obviously, but actually more guidance is often helpful. And we find that in Wales, don't we? Sometimes we are kind of calling out for guidance. And there's always going to be critique. But I think sometimes it's worth going back to the source, isn't it? Because I can imagine lots of people will read that TES article, which is very balanced, and read the Michael Rosen article as well, and maybe that will inform their opinions on it. So that's my first little quite serious offering, and then we get sillier from here.
I was sort of amused. There was one little phrase that jumped out at me that made me think of English education policy. It reminded me of that little thing they sometimes say, no animals were harmed in the making of this film or something. Few academics were involved. Few academics were involved in the making of this policy. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good or a bad thing, but that is a classic England thing. I would suggest they don't tend to like them much, do they?
No, they don't.
There is a long list of acknowledgements with some of our friends and frenemies of the podcast included on there. But yeah, I had a read through, and there is a lot of consultants and a lot of academies and a lot of people who run companies, which is kind of what they hint at in the TES article, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm interested in the fact that did it say it was 150 pages long, including 50 pages of appendices?
It is.
And there's a part of me that goes, oh my goodness me. But then there's a part of me that has, heard about a piece of doctoral research done in this place, someone I'm hoping to get on the podcast at some point, where obviously we've gone the other way, really, haven't we, here in Wales? We tend to go for a minimal approach to guidance. Hello, Welsh Government. And this research did involve getting a load of named literacy coordinators together and asking them some pretty foundational stuff about literacy, and they were struggling to nail that stuff down because they didn't have the kind of guidance or frameworks to do it, and were being expected to sort of do it from scratch. So there's probably a balance between these two things, isn't there? But yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, and there's about 30, maybe 20 pages of references. And again, yes, that's a lot of references, but actually, would we want fewer references? Like they say they haven't consulted academics, but actually there's a lot, there's hundreds and hundreds of references, I'd say. And then the other appendices tend to be things like a glossary, which again is quite useful, right?
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that's often missing, isn't it, over here?
To what extent? Because I it's good that you read directly from the source, which clearly does emphasize the importance of, engaging them with the content of their writing and the purpose and all of that. Does it support teachers to do that in the same depth as it does? Because the reason why I'm saying this is because I see a similar issue that has emerged, and I'm going to sound like a bit of a dog with a bone here, about drama teaching, in that there's a really simple graphic that is from a book about planning process drama, which I won't go into, but it talks about drama teaching having kind of two strands, one being about the content leading to and learning through drama, and one strand being about learning about the form, leading to sort of learning about drama as an art form, like how we communicate meaning in it. And you could take the same sort of approach with writing, couldn't you? All writing has got to be about something, about content. And the more that you engage the learners in that content and get them thinking about what they want to say about it, and the more they're potentially going to be engaged in thinking, well, how am I going to express that? Like what is that going to look like on a page? And sometimes it's like a double helix. So those two strands are kind of coming together and moving apart, because sometimes you have to look at more about the form and your sentence structure and all of that. And then sometimes you have to spend more time going, like, let's think about the issue or the imaginative thing that we're trying to write a creative piece about. And then sometimes they're brought quite closely together. And what I'm seeing a lot happening in drama teaching is a lot of focus on the form, because you can see it, it's visible, it's kind of in a way easier to teach, but less about the content. And then you get kind of quite surface level pieces, and you get kids that, you know, don't feel passionate about what they're trying to say, and therefore how they're trying to say it. So yeah, that I haven't been to the original source, so I would be interested to know how much support teachers are getting in supporting the content part of it as well as the form.
Yeah, so the simple view of writing, I would say primary teachers, you're probably familiar, but secondary teachers probably not. It's very similar to the simple view of reading. But in writing, you've got good language composition and then good transcription skills. So those are the kind of two elements that they've put together. And it's like, I'm not going to know what that's called. It's like a kind of quadrant, and you want pupils to have good language composition and good transcription skills. And you'll see different groups of learners falling into different kind of areas on that graph. So that's kind of the view that they're putting across.
Okay.
And I think there's quite a lot of guidance in how to help with both of those things. But then, yeah, the actual purpose for writing and the joy, I think in the Tez article, she says it's an afterthought. And I can sort of see that, because yes, in that, I read a section from the introduction there. It does sort of talk about that. But then when you actually get into the kind of the how-to bits, like here's the things you should be teaching in reception, here's the things you should be teaching in year one, etc.
It's more technical.
Exactly.
Well, that was what I was going to ask, and maybe we need an episode on this, because the immediate thing that sprang to my mind is the bit that you read waxes lyrical about the need for pupils to actually do things that are enjoyable and relevant to them. And then my question was, do the performance measures, which are probably somewhere else in that document, slightly sort of steer teachers away from that, and that sort of stuff is there to kind of say the warm, fluffy stuff?
Yeah, and there is this tension as well in teaching English in primary schools. So when I learnt to teach, we were told it's all about genre. So genre theory was a huge thing. And we were writing instructions, we were writing stories, we were writing non-chronological reports. And then the kind of the skills, I guess, the language composition stuff and the transcription skills kind of came through those genre. And then there was a bit of a pendulum shift towards, we're going to focus on the composition and the transcription skills, and then we'll see which genres kind of fit with that or fit with our topic, so kind of cross-curricular stuff, and we'll write that type. But then there's a tendency often to stick to stories because they're the most fun to write, or the teacher's very favourite types of writing. And then also there's an element of all subjects becoming English. This is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, actually, that in history, we're writing a diary entry as a Victorian child. But actually what we're learning is how to write a diary entry. We're not really learning history. And I think that's been another kind of issue that lots of schools are finding as well. Yeah. So I think, fair play to the DfE. They've done something. It's a huge document. Oh yeah, it's also worth saying, at the time of recording, this is in draft, and it will be released in the autumn term. So it will have been out for a term at this point. But it could be that there are changes are coming.
I feel an episode coming on that,
yeah,
to be honest.
I do.
Okay, time for something completely different and quite short. See what we make of this. This is a short article from Scientific American. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone, said French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal in the mid-17th century. The sentiment may be truer today than ever, according to a paper published on July the 4th in Science. Researchers asked participants to rate how much they enjoyed being in a room with nothing to do. Of 409 participants, nearly half said they did not like the experience. When asked to do the same at home for 6 to 15 minutes, a third said that they had cheated. In one telling experiment, each of 55 participants was seated alone in a quiet, empty room with nothing to do, except they had access to a button that would deliver an electric shock to their ankle that they had previously described as unpleasant. In their 15 minutes of solitude, 67% of the men and 25% of the women chose to shock themselves instead of simply sitting quietly.
Oh my goodness. No, they didn't. Surely not.
Lead author Timothy Wilson, a University of Virginia psychologist, says that with smartphones, tablets and TVs within reach anytime, many of us may not know what to do when we have time to ponder without distraction. But the electric shock results were still surprising. Say that again. He suggests we could make our downtime, even traffic jams and waiting rooms, more relaxing and interesting by learning how to be alone with our thoughts. I suspect that practice helps, as does finding topics that you enjoy thinking about in detail and can return to time and again, so you don't have to start from scratch each time, says Wilson. What do we make of that?
That is unbelievable. Right? 60, it was 65.
65 men.
65 men and 25 women, interestingly.
That's a huge gender difference.
Yes.
Isn't it? It's absolutely massive.
It's not the first time I've heard about this difference.
Yeah.
As in, my husband was talking to me about it in terms of something he'd read. I don't know how much evidence was underneath it, but he said about the difference of men and women in traffic.
Right.
And how men find it much harder to be in traffic and there be absolutely have no control over that. Like, whereas women are more able to sort of self-regulate and go, there's nothing I can do, so just sit it out. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it sort of mirrors that thing that, a bloke would rather like electrify himself than just go, okay, nothing I can do.
It's that being alone with your thoughts thing as well, isn't it? It's being so uncomfortable with actually just being alone with your thoughts that you'd rather give yourself an electric shock.
Yeah, it's wild.
What is going on there?
Wild.
Yeah, I wonder what are people consciously thinking, I'm going to make myself feel uncomfortable? Or are they thinking, I'm bored? Actually, I'm gonna push this button. Yeah. And is it kind of pursuit of something?
Yeah.
Entertainment, I guess.
Pursuit of some form of stimulus.
I mean, it sounds, if we were to pull apart that experiment, it sounds a little bit flawed because it's also sort of like a don't touch this button kind of thing, isn't it? Someone tells you not to electrify yourself. The curiosity might kind of be like,
I'll just electrify myself.
Let me just see how painful this. And had they, maybe I missed this in the article, had they already felt what it was going to feel like before?
It was a shock that they had previously described as unpleasant. So presumably
so they knew what was coming.
Calibrated their shock. I mean, it makes me wonder, is there a connection between this and the fact that you think about social media, you think about the algorithms, and we've talked about this before, haven't we? The fact that the algorithms are tuned to deliver you stuff that's going to make you cross, because that's what keeps your attention. And so are people sort of now becoming slightly programmed to seek out things that are going to make them unhappy, cross, uncomfortable. I don't know. It's just weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sucks.
It does a bit.
Wow. Happy Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. If you're sitting on the sofa feeling a bit bored, maybe what you're missing is a button that will deliver you an electric shock. I wonder how many of our listeners would press that button while listening to our podcast.
I think I might press it once. I think, does it say whether they pressed it more than once?
It doesn't in that article.
No.
I'd have to go back to the original in science.
I can sort of see, like, I've felt it before, but maybe kind of curiosity, and then like, oh yeah, nope, still don't like it.
Still don't like it. Yeah.
You know, like something to do. Maybe.
They were only there for 15 minutes, so I don't know how many times it.
I reckon I could sit for 15 minutes without electrifying myself. I'm going to say it right now. I'm in the 75% of women who don't feel the need to hurt myself.
It's just reminding me of another, I think it might have been a light episode offering that I brought about an article that I came across in some women's magazine that was about sort of free walking. Do you remember this? Where it was like encouraging people who weren't comfortable just doing run or a walk with no music, they called it like, I don't know, like naked running or naked walk, or like just free
name, yeah.
And it was talking about like how you wean yourself out, how you sort of build up slowly into, first of all, go for a walk without any stimulation, just for 5 minutes. And I was thinking, what is this?
People are strange, aren't they? Yeah.
But at the same time, I used to run a fair bit, and I used to like to listen to music, but something this is that ambulare thing as well.
Oh, Dr. Kev,
Dr. Kev talks about. Something happens when you go for a long period of time. I don't know whether it happens to anybody else, where you're doing something mundane and you haven't got any other mental stimulation, and your thoughts do start freeing up, and it's really I used to find it really satisfying. So try to do that when I go on dog walks, rather than always be listening to a podcast, because that's my jam.
Yeah, not good for people, this, is it?
No. Crikey. Okay.
There we go. Small but perfectly formed contribution.
I like it. Okay, we're back with writing.
There we go.
Fluke.
It's like we planned
Buttons
it.
at the ready, folks.
Yeah. Maybe we need to have that as a light episode.
When you hear me hitting the button, it's time to move on.
It's a different experiment, isn't it? It's like that family counselling one where you can give your, I'm sure it's on like Adam's Family or something like that, where you can give a family member an electric shock. Anyway, I digress.
Okay.
All right, so I've got an offering from Daisy Christodoulou, who was mentioned in an article that I brought in the October half term, dealing with AI. And I wondered actually if Daisy Christodoulou had an opinion on AI in education. Turns out she's got lots, because we really liked her book, Tom, didn't we? Teachers versus
we
Tech.
Did.
And I was thinking, gosh, Daisy, come on, you need to bring out another one now that AI is out of the box. So her blog is No More Marking on Substack, and this blog entry was written in July of 2025, and it's entitled "What is the Point of Learning to Write in a World with AI?" Now, I'm not going to read you the whole blog, but she's a fan of a metaphor. I think she's a former English teacher, and very knowledgeable individual. But she uses a really nice metaphor in this article. I'm just going to read you a couple of paragraphs from it so that we can get the sort of point that she's trying to make here about AI and writing. She says, think about marathon running. Ancient Greek day runners were a vital part of the functioning of Greek city-states. Their aim was to get a message from A to B as quickly as possible, and in a world with no combustion engine or telegrams or internet, if you need to send a message, you needed a day runner. Nowadays, that is obviously not the case. If you need to send a friend a message who's 26 miles away, you probably send a text message. If they needed a particular physical set of documents, you still wouldn't hire a day runner, you'd hire a taxi driver instead. And yet, running marathons is incredibly popular, and more people run the London Marathon every year than there were ever day runners. None of them run it to a courier, the message to a courier. The vast majority run it for reasons of personal development. A tiny fraction do it to gain economic benefit, not from being messengers, but from winning races and providing entertainment, which spectators are willing to pay for. So she sort of goes on in the article to sort of make this comparison and to sort of try to unpick why students are really baffled that teachers are, angry with them for going about writing the most efficient way, in other words, asking AI to write it for them. And teachers are really baffled, because, why wouldn't they want to, put in the work and learn from the experience? Why have they denied themselves that? And I just thought it was a really nice metaphor here. And I guess it sort of points at where you may and may not sort of draw your red line as a student and communicate to your pupil, as a teacher, communicate to your pupils when you might and might not use AI for writing in the current climate.
Yeah, it just makes it all the more important, doesn't it, that if you're going to make the kids do the hard thing, which is not fire up ChatGPT and turn out a load of incredibly bland, sorry, I don't like reading ChatGPT stuff, incredibly bland stuff, they've got to know why, because you're right. If they're massive sort of AI fans, they're going to go, well, why? What's the problem with doing this? And you're there going, I want you to run 26 miles, and going, no thanks. But yeah, I suppose you've got to make it clear why you're making them go the hard way round, and they've got to, I suppose, not only understand that, but to some extent, be on board with it.
Yeah, and it reminds me a little bit about the point that you made in the episode last season about reading. That, all this focus on phonics, and it's nothing to do with AI, but you were really concerned because obviously you've got kids yourself, Sian, you're the same, about the upshot for reading for pleasure. And you could sort of say the same of writing. It's sort of if they don't, and I suppose in education, maybe that's where the spark of writing for pleasure might begin. And so, somehow we've got to work with it. It's out there. We've got to acknowledge that they might use it. I think she in this article, she talks about how, if you were going to write a letter to somebody and you didn't know how to kind of word it, you might get some prompts from AI, you might tweak it, and, it's not going to be a life-changing piece of writing, but it's a bit more functional. So making that purpose really, really clear and why the process is worth going the hard road for, doing the 26 point whatever miles it is to achieve is important.
Yeah, I definitely think being diplomatic in emails is a strength of AI, right? Have you guys done that where you've got your bullet points and some of them perhaps are like not the easiest messages to hear, and you can put your bullet points of your points in and say, write this in a really diplomatic and kind way.
No, I've never thought of doing that.
Oh my gosh, I do this
now
all the
it's become
time.
clear why I'm not the dean.
Honestly though, what I tend to do is I tend to put an example of a previous email that I've written in. I say, write it in this style. Here are the points that I want to get across. And it will write this email. And I might have agonized over that email for 20 minutes. But equally, AI can do it in seconds. But yeah, it's the purpose, isn't it? It's the disconnect. I would never say to AI, make the decision. Like, am I going to allow the attendance policy to be flexible in this case? Or actually, am I going to follow it to the letter? No, that's a decision for me to make. Yeah. But once I've decided to deliver the hard message, I'm sorry, I am following the attendance policy, AI can help me communicate that in a way that perhaps would have just taken me a lot longer. And I think, when children don't understand the purpose of what it is that they're doing and want to short circuit it with AI, that's when we have problems, right? Because there's a vast difference between writing an essay title or writing an assignment title and putting that into AI and saying, write my assignment for me, and asking it, give me 5 seminal pieces of literature about this topic, and then using those to and then go and further your reading. So there's kind of wide scales of what it could be used for in writing and kind of research in general.
Wow. Welcome to a whole new era of people thinking I'm really smooth and diplomatic at work.
Oh yeah, well this is a top tip for you.
This is your Christmas present to me, Sian.
No, keep channeling it in a Philip Glass, Tom. Be guided accordingly.
Yes, my email, I'm going to have a little signature. I don't like email signatures, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, but I'm going to have one that said, this email not written with AI. My authentic self.
So there we have it. Another really good metaphor that helps us to sort of unpick some of these things from Daisy Christodoulou. Over to you, Sian.
Thank you, Daisy. I'm carrying on with the writing theme, sort of. How has this happened?
I don't know, but my buttons are at the ready.
So, I am holding a book here that's called 100 Cracking Jokes, The Best from the Valleys. And it's by David Jandrell. So for listeners who are not South Wales natives, the South Wales valleys have got a sort of specific brand of humour, I would say. And my grandfather was from Bargoed. Little shout out there to Bargoed. Listeners from Bargoed, there we go. Write in and tell us. And these are jokes that I would have heard him tell. And I just thought it was quite interesting, having read the writing framework and the critique of it, about how not all writing is prose. I thought, what's writing? Jokes. And we like jokes at Christmas, don't we? A nice Christmas cracker joke. So I wanted to read the author's introduction, and then I'm going to give you a few of these jokes. In short, the jokes in here are funny. I'm not going to go into long, laborious and pretentious literary analysis on the definition of a joke. I will simply say that these stories have made me laugh and have also gone down very well when I've passed them on to others. I do not claim to have written any of the jokes in this book. I have merely documented the best of those I have heard in pubs, work and at social occasions. The original sources of these are not known to me. The versions that I have heard may be far removed from their original form as tellers leave bits out or add some to fit their audience. I guess some would have been changed hundreds of times by the time they reached my ear. Some may have been near to the original version, particularly if they had been broadcast recently on TV, radio, or at a live stand-up comedy show. I haven't seen much televised comedy as my TV seems to broadcast soap continuously, even when there's no soap on. I must take charge of the remote control and the video recorder. That's my next New Year's resolution. It's probably worth saying this book was written in 2004. It's maybe showing its age slightly there. Oddly enough, I've only seen 2 comedians live, and I hasten to add none of their material is suitable for inclusion in this book. So, all my material has come to me live from Joe Public. In other words, people who don't make a living from telling gags, but know a good joke when they hear them. Now I am passing them on to you. All I can say now is read on and see what you think. So in this book, there are 100 cracking jokes, and I've selected 3, and they're 3 that I think I've heard before. So I'm interested in, do we think these are funny? And maybe have we heard them before? Are we ready? A guy walked into a pub with a newt on his shoulder. He approached the bar and asked for a pint of lager for me and a thimbleful of bitter for Tiny, please. As the landlord was pulling the pint of lager, he asked who the thimbleful of bitter was for. The guy pointed to the newt, who was still sitting on his shoulder. The landlord nodded and filled a thimble with bitter. He handed it to the newt, which started drinking it straight away. The guy picked up his lager and he started to drink it. The landlord, keen to make conversation, said to the guy, "So, why'd you call him Tiny?" The guy replied, "Because he's my newt." Thank you for laughing. I did worry I was going to be met with stony silence. Okay, I've got another one.
Who is it who coined the phrase "tired and emotional as a newt"? Do you remember?
Yeah.
There's that saying, isn't there, "drunk as a newt"? And the euphemism "tired and emotional," and somebody was described, I think, in a news report as being tired and emotional as a newt.
Newts are clearly big in comedy. Clearly.
And alcoholic comedy.
Yes.
Okay, got our second one. 3 blokes were discussing what they thought had been the greatest advancements in science and technology over the last 100 years. The first one said, "I reckon the greatest breakthrough was the kidney transplant, because if it wasn't for that, it'd be curtains for me." The second one said, "I reckon the greatest breakthrough was the heart transplant, because it wasn't for that, it would have been curtains for me." The third one said, "I reckon the greatest breakthrough was the invention of the Venetian blinds." Do we hear the punchline? Because if it wasn't for that, it would be curtains for all of us. Okay, and I'm going to finish with one, final one. I think this one's a classic. I feel like we will know this one, surely. A man walked into a police station with a penguin. "Where did you get that from?" asked the desk sergeant. "Found it walking down the road," said the man. "What shall I do with it?" "If I were you, I'd take it to the zoo," suggested the sergeant. 2 days later, the sergeant spotted the same man walking through town. He still had the penguin with him. "I thought I told you to take that penguin to the zoo," the sergeant said. "I did yesterday," said the man. "Today I'm taking him to the cinema."
I like simple humour like that. It gets me. It tickles me. It tickles my dad as well. I think we've got the same sort of humour.
I think it's a particular type of humour. And yeah, I was kind of struck by that it's not the greatest writing, is it, kind of jokes. And also there's lots of like the whole "it'd be curtains for me" thing.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of like understanding of language that you need in order to kind of get these jokes.
Yeah.
But these are jokes that I've never read that book before. I found it in the study in my parents' house. And as I was reading through it, so many of them, I was like, oh yeah, I know that joke. But I wouldn't be able to tell it without having printed it off.
No. Well, you should have set us homework. Favourite Christmas jokes.
Favourite Christmas
set us
jokes.
homework, didn't you?
I
Sian
did.
could have set us homework.
Next year.
Year. It's making me think a little bit about Michael Rosen again, because he is a big advocate of the sort of irreverence of language. I think I saw him on the news a few months ago. I think he's compiling a new book of colloquial terms for different words.
Yeah.
And he's like, what does everyone call this? And, everyone's got it depending on your region, so like in Wales, we call shoes daps sometimes. And, there are loads of them.
Like buns, cobs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that came up in the interview.
That's a big one. Yeah, he's written a
loves
book as well, which is like regional nursery rhymes. So nursery rhymes from all over the country. And it's interesting because there's some where it only works if you read it with a specific accent.
Yeah.
Because it's like the kind of rhyming and the kind of joke doesn't work if you say bath instead of bath, for example.
Yes. Yeah, I do like it. Oh,
There
excellent.
we go. Oh, here's one for you, Sian.
Oh, yes.
What did Russell Crowe say when a lion ate his wife?
I don't know. What did Russell Crowe say?
Nothing. He was Gladiator.
Excellent. Excellent. Brilliant. Write in with some more.
Right. And not unconnected to your one, Emma.
Okay.
Your thing, which ended up with me realising I've been writing emails wrong all my life. I've got an article from The Economist entitled, "Do not bring your whole self to work." A phrase that first became fashionable a decade ago is everywhere. Bring your whole self is one of 4 values that British Land, a property developer, trumpets on its website. Quartz, a publisher, ran a workshop last year called How to Navigate the Whole Self Workplace. Your whole self is welcome here, pledges ING, a bank, to prospective employees. There are spin-off selves. Workday, an enterprise software firm, wants its employees to be their best selves at work. Finn, a classified ads site in Norway, is hiring for a compensation and benefits specialist who loves to bring their full self to the office. Key, an American bank, prefers to use the term authentic self. The idea that unites these phrases is that employees need not pretend to be someone they aren't. Instead of having a workplace persona and a non-workplace persona, people can just relax and always be themselves. Behind this thought lies a good intention, or rather lots of good intentions. The notion of the whole self variously captures the idea that people are more engaged in work if they believe in a firm's purpose, that teams are more effective if colleagues understand each other, that people with different identities should feel comfortable in their own skins, that firms should care about and respond to issues that affect their staff's well-being, from mental health to childcare, and that leaders need to show some of their personal side to be connected with their staff. None of these things is silly. Many are, in fact, actively desirable. However, any idea that covers so much ground is bound to have holes in it, and this one would make a colander blush. Most obviously, no one should actually bring their whole selves to work. People are a melange of traits, some good, some bad. Many of them should be kept well away from the workplace. Your professional self displays commitment to the job and eats lunch at a desk. Your whole self is planning the next holiday and binges ice cream on the sofa. Your professional self makes presentations to the board and says things like, "Let's get the analytics team to kick the tyres on this." Your whole self cannot operate a toaster and says things like, "Has anyone seen my socks?" Pretending to be someone you are not is not a problem, it's essential. For the same reasons, your employer may say it wants you to bring your whole self to work, but doesn't really mean it. A company is a hierarchy in which even the most understanding bosses expect people to follow orders rather than their hearts. Say something that causes your firm embarrassment, as a senior HSBC executive did last month, by making fun of apocalyptic warnings about climate change, and you will end up being disowned rather than lauded for authenticity. This column, which is called the Bartleby column, I should mention, is named for a short story by Herman Melville, in which the eponymous character speaks his own truth by saying, "I would prefer not to every single request made of him by his manager." He ends up dead. Any job that involves a uniform is by definition asking employees to subsume their personalities, not express them. When times are tough or performance is shoddy, an employee is an individual second and a line item in the budget first. If the circumstances require it, he'll be asked to leave and take his whole self with him. As a result, the bringing of whole selves is carefully circumscribed. Candidates for jobs typically feel obliged to tell interviewers a few things about themselves in order to show that they're rounded human beings. Without fail, these things are along the lines of, I have a dog, run a local food bank, and love to go sea kayaking. They are never, I hate animals, exercise, and my fellow humans. Lots of executives, too, deal in whole selfery of a very synthetic kind. As a rule of thumb, if you're taking advice on how to be authentic, you're not being authentic. And if you're scheduling meetings in order to display vulnerability, you're mainly showing controlled cunning. One of the attractions of the workplace is that it is a place where there is a shared endeavour. That endeavour is called work. You need to be friendly to be a good colleague, but you don't need to be friends. You need to be capable of empathy, but you don't need to constantly emote. You need to turn up, try hard, and play your part. You have to bring your role self.
Did you secretly write this?
Did I get ChatGPT to write it? No, I read it. I saw the headline. I thought, I want to read that. I read it. I agreed with it all.
This is reminding me a little bit, and I'm not going to say too much about it, but Sian and I had some constructive critique recently. Myself, Sian, and our colleague Kerry, we've been co-authoring, and if you heard the episode, you'll know about it, some principles of mentoring. And one of the things that I can't remember whether we put it in the first place or whether our school colleagues co-constructed it with us was about teacher identity. Do you remember this? And we did get some constructive, it was fair, constructive critique along the lines of, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's not a thing. What even is that? And we were like, is that a thing? It didn't come from nowhere. And I think there is such a thing as your sort of work persona, and indeed a teacher identity. Like you sort of, I wouldn't say when I was teaching, I was my whole self. So
no, well, you've definitely got to be a more positive version of yourself, haven't you? Like you can't, if you're having a bad day, you can't let the kids see that necessarily. Like you need to sort of put on a bit of a show. And I think that's the same in all workplaces, right? Like obviously there are exceptions, and we want people to be able to share things sometimes with colleagues, especially if it's going to impact the work. But actually, there's always an element of putting on a bit of a show, isn't there? I was watching a video a couple of days ago where it was like, it was a career coach saying, this is one of the things that I would say always lie about at interviews. And again, like there's certain things. The thing she was saying was, if they ask you, are you actively interviewing elsewhere? The only right answer is yes, or I'd prefer not to say. If you were to say, oh, actually, I really need this job and nobody else will have me, like that's not a good thing to say in an interview, but that might be true, right? And there's an element of the same, isn't there? Like you've got to sort of put your best foot forward sometimes at work, like even if you're not really feeling like that's what you want to do.
We had that strange thing, didn't we? We've talked about it before, the old Lego brick thing. And I know this happens in some schools because I've seen these Lego bricks out and about in schools. You have to do this personality test and then you end up with 4 colours. I think this was before your time, Sian.
This isn't really you could get me to do this.
We did this thing and then it sort of, it ranked these 4 sort of personality traits in order. And then I remember when we did it here, we all sort of paraded around this room holding our Lego bricks stacked in the order from top to bottom of what we were most like. And there are 2 things that I remember most about it. One was that I was a tiny minority of people in terms of the order of them. Almost everybody fell into one of 2 categories. The red ones and the yellow ones were very prevalent and they were quite low for me. I was like a blue and a green, and there were only 2 other people. And secondly, there was a new colleague who I didn't know very well who was parading around with her Lego bricks the opposite way round to mine. And my first reaction was, we can never be friends.
I remember doing a personality test once, and the scores that came out, again, it was colours, but it was only 2 colours that you got at the end. They're all kind of variations on the theme, aren't they?
They are.
And then they gave us all this little like summary sheet. And on one of my things was, you were probably really good at taking minutes in meetings. And then my line manager at the time asked me to take all the minutes in the meetings. And I was like, absolutely not. Like I'm terrible at taking minutes in meetings. And also, I don't want to do it all the time.
This is what happened in ours as well, is that I came out, my Lego bricks basically said I was a massive introvert. And lots of other people's weren't. And all that happened was that the next time we had a group discussion in the session and I was standing there not saying very much, somebody immediately went, Tom's a massive Tom, what do you think? Let's bring Tom into that. I was just wanting the world to swallow me up, So it was a very interesting thing, but it was not the kind of unalloyed, brilliantly positive thing for everybody, I don't think.
I think people have very different opinions about this, don't they?
Yeah.
Like some people like to be friends with their colleagues and they like to kind of have personal relationships outside of work.
Yep.
And there's maybe WhatsApp groups and kind of socials that happen. Other people, that's their literal worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be in the WhatsApp group and they don't want to go to the social event.
Yeah.
And I think that both are okay, right? I think it's a choice. Like I've definitely worked in workplaces where I haven't sort of made any friends at work. And in some ways that feels like a little bit of a loss.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be friends with everybody.
No.
But sometimes an element of, you know, having a bit of small talk, being able to go for a drink after work sometimes is quite nice, especially when you've done something hard or you've had a difficult day, somebody gets it. Yeah. But then also being in each other's pockets and knowing each other too well perhaps can cause conflicts of interest sometimes, do we think?
Yeah, definitely. There's a sort of a coziness or it's one to watch out for and to keep in balance, I think. But I agree with the final sentiments of that sometimes like we're here to do a thing.
Yes, the purpose is the job, right?
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, that was a very you article.
It was, wasn't it? Yes.
All right, something light, and you'll need your headphones at the ready for this. I've said it before, and I've brought offerings before on the podcast. I love Desert Island Discs, presented by Lauren Laverne. I also love Ramesh Ranganathan, comedian and broadcaster. He's very dry. I find him incredibly funny. So he was on Desert Island Discs back in June of 2025. And some people may not know that he was formerly a maths teacher in a secondary school environment. So I've got a little clip here, and then I've got some questions mainly to ask Sian, but maybe Tom will indulge us again because these are questions. No maths questions. No maths questions. Okay, so this is Ramesh talking about his time in the classroom.
Nathan, after you got through your A-levels and went to university, you became a maths teacher at your old school in Crawley. What did you learn about yourself while you were in the classroom?
There wasn't a single day of that job that I didn't feel completely fulfilled. I felt very stressed. It's the most stressed I've ever been in my life, actually. There's not been a single day of my comedy career that's even come close to the stress that I felt as a teacher. I cannot speak highly enough of teachers and teaching and how much I loved that job. I'll give you one example. I went to teach at a school that had just come out of special measures, and it was a really tough school. A lot of the kids had difficult backgrounds, and I was teaching a bottom set, year 9, and I went in to teach my first lesson with them. I just started at the school, and they were throwing stuff around. They were like just shouting, screaming, and it took me half an hour to get them sat down. And the lesson was an hour. And I looked at like their files, and they were just like really troubled kids, right? And a lot of them were struggling at home. Why should they listen to a maths teacher? I get it. And every lesson I just like worked at like trying to get on side with them and like get them to enjoy the lessons and da-da-da. Anyway, one day I walked in to start the lesson and they were sat with their books ready to start the lesson. And that is probably the proudest I've ever been of anything I've ever done, including comedy and anything.
And that's it. I started listening to it and I was thinking, oh gosh, please stop telling everybody how stressful it is to be a teacher. We know it's stressful being a teacher, but what I love about that is that one of his proudest moments, and he's got a massive career. Yeah. You know, he's on everything, but his proudest moment is that moment when he got year 9 to respect him and ready to learn. I thought that's worth a play on our Christmas episode. It's a little bit light and fluffy. I did have a question. So she asked, what did you learn about yourself from your time in the classroom? So that's to both of you. But Sian, on one of our earliest Christmas episodes, I think we talked about our most embarrassing classroom moment. And I feel that you shouldn't get off too lightly now that we're sort of initiating you into the podcast.
Yes. So I did faint in the classroom once, and I was quite unwell, as in I didn't come around from the faint, and they had to call an ambulance.
Oh my God.
So that's my most embarrassing classroom moment. I think I think I'm maybe an NQT. The kids were brilliant. I had a TA. Everyone was safe. It was all fine. But I don't think I'll ever forget the being wheeled through the corridors of the school by paramedics.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And it's a lesson in, if you are ill, don't go to school, which I always say to the student teachers. I sometimes tell them that because I was powering through what was essentially a nasty cold. But I just got to the point where it had gone to my chest and I had a sinus infection and, I was too unwell not to be there. But you know what it's like. Sometimes it's easier to go in. And it felt like that this morning, and boy, did I regret it. So that's definitely up there with my most that's my most embarrassing teaching moment, definitely.
I think Tom's most embarrassing moment had a medical
Yes,
disaster at the heart of it.
I was just going to say, just if anyone hasn't listened all the way back to season 1, yours goes hand in hand with mine, which involved falling flat on my face while in NQT and ending up in hospital, having my face stitched back together. But you actually put a pupil in hospital, didn't you?
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was my colleague who was teaching the same lesson, but we were teaching this scheme of work around a Chilean dictator, General Pinochet, and we were doing some kind of quite dramatic role play, quite immersive.
Sponsored violence got a bit real.
Yeah. And in my friend's class, the pupil got so into it that she bolted for the door and broke her wrist because the door didn't open. So that was like pretty embarrassing. And I definitely had something to do with it because, we co-designed this scheme of work. They got well into it. Tom, this is sort of question that makes you balk and maybe be sick a little bit in your mouth. But what did you learn about yourself from your time in the classroom?
As a teacher, I think I've said this before. Actually, I learnt that I'm perfectly happy if the pupils believe that they did something themselves, even if actually, in truth, I was quietly sort of pointing them in the right direction. I did not want or need the pupils to be coming up to me going, "You're the best teacher. This is all thanks to you. Like, you did all of this." I was actually much happier if they believed they'd done it themselves.
Yeah. What about you, Sian?
The first thing that came to mind is how productive I could be. I guess how much you can achieve in a day. And again, I don't think anything comes close really to doing that as a teacher. And now sometimes I look back on that and I think, when I'm struggling to mark 3 assignments in a day, I sort of think, gosh, I could have taught 6 lessons, run a professional learning session, had a meeting with a student teacher and met 5 parents all in one day. And I think just how to be efficient, how to get lots of stuff done, and also not being too perfectionist about stuff. So kind of going hand in hand. Sometimes you've just got to draw a line under something and say it's good enough, isn't it?
Absolutely. Good. There we
Very
go.
nice.
Light and fluffy.
Lovely. Right, Sian, your
Yeah.
final item.
I'm going full Christmas, guys.
Good.
Okay, hats
Good.
on.
Strap in.
It's a Christmas poem.
Isn't this normally your territory?
Yeah, it is. I like it.
Good. I've brought a Christmas poem. It's called Christmas Thank Yous. Dear Auntie. Oh, sorry, I should say who it's by Mike Gower. Dear Auntie. Oh, what a nice jumper. I've always adored powder blue. And fancy you thinking of orange and pink for the stripes. How clever of you. Dear Uncle, the soap is terrific, so useful, and such a kind thought. And how did you guess that I just used the last of the soap that last Christmas brought? Dear Gran, many thanks for the hankies. Now I really can't wait for the flu. And the daisies embroidered in red around the M for Michael. How thoughtful of you. Dear cousin, what socks, and the same sort you wear, so you must be the last word in style. And I'm certain you're right that the luminous green will make me stand out a mile. Dear sister, I quite understand your concern. It's a risk sending jam in the post. But I think I've pulled out all the big bits of glass, so it won't taste too sharp spread on toast. Dear Grandad, don't fret, I'm delighted. So don't think your gift will offend. I'm not at all hurt that you gave up this year and just sent me a £5 to spend. So I love that joke. I feel like I read it in like a kids' talent show at school as a child. But I've got a question for you.
Oh.
Are you, well, there's I'm going to put you in 3 camps. Okay. Are you full surprise gift camp? You don't want to send a list, you just want surprises. Are you give a list and people have to adhere to the list? Or are you team money or voucher, please? What would you go for, Tom?
Oof, I'm not team list. I'm team give me something useful.
Ooh.
Or something I can eat.
He's made his new category.
Yes. I'm like, please don't give me tat. Can I have an extra camp just called please don't give me tat?
It's halfway between list and surprise, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think.
I like...
Because you've given some parameters there, which are akin to, items on a list.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of killing the surprise. I'd rather have a surprise, but I'd rather not it be a tat surprise.
You don't want more stuff. That's what I'm hearing.
No stuff. No, absolutely not. No tat.
How about you, Emma?
This one's tricky because I hate to say this, it depends on who's buying.
How good a gift giver they are. I see there's different categories for different people.
Yeah, there's certain people who you control more than others, isn't there?
Well, I think I don't know, it's just...
Is it earned autonomy?
Well, some people really desperately, like my mum always desperately wants a list from me. And I think she's maybe been burned because she's bought me a few surprises in the past. She wouldn't mind me saying she once bought me a necklace back in the 90s when those T-bar necklaces, those gold T-bar necklaces were in fashion. And this one was like something that Mr. T would wear. It was like humongous. And she's never lived it down really because all I wanted was a nice little delicate version. This was just enormous. And so she now will always ask for the list. And I've had a few random things, but I do like surprises because I think everyone sort of secretly wants to be shown that they are understood by others through the gifts that they select. But I'm also not stupid. It's an incredibly busy and difficult time around Christmas, so giving some people a list is no problem as far as I'm concerned. It was a very diplomatic response, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
But it did make me laugh when you were reading that poem because it made me think about my sister and I always rib each other because when we were growing up, handheld cameras were like a really big thing. So almost every Christmas day from about 1993 to 2001 have been recorded. Every single moment has been recorded. So what we now have are just brilliant moments of footage where we're opening presents that we don't like. And so we rib each other to within an inch of each other's lives about how we deal with those moments. Oh, thanks. Oh, look, I really like it. Yeah, it's
and
great.
yet you've never brought that footage to a Christmas episode.
Next year is planning itself.
Here we are with all the equipment, the big screen, the audio interfaces, the whole lot, and yet.
What are you?
Well, I grew up in a full surprise family.
Oh, okay.
So never would a list of, if anything, I feel slightly offended by being asked because I want to feel known, by the gift giver. My husband is a full list family. Oh. And honestly, the first couple of years, I was quite shocked. But then I realised that if I give a list on Christmas Day, I just open everything that I want. Whereas with my family, it can be a bit hit and miss, and that's part of the fun of it, I think. But I don't know. So now I get the best of both worlds, I think. Get a little bit 50-50. But for me, it's definitely a thing. It's definitely different, and where does the cognitive load sit, I've got the worst of both worlds in that sense.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, well, what are you, dear listener?
Yeah, and where do the thank you letters sit on the writing framework?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Gosh.
We'll talk about that in that episode.
Okay, we know what's coming next, listeners. It's got to be Unsung Heroes of Music.
Hey, which is now a thing.
It's now a thing. What is this? Is this the 4th year of it now?
I think it is.
Yes, 4th year.
It's a convention.
So, yes, and it's like a bit of a double Unsung Heroes of Music, this one. It's an individual and it's a group. And an unnamed group. So my individual is Scott Bradley, a composer who was born in 1891 and died in 1977. He was an American composer, mostly known for scoring Tom and Jerry.
Ooh.
Which I have been watching quite a lot with my little ones. Now, let's both not get hung up on, but also not not mention that obviously Tom and Jerry cartoons are very much of the first
Of the
half
time.
of the 20th century. And that occasionally I do kind of go, oop, better not put that episode on again.
Yes.
But the music is absolutely amazing for Tom and Jerry. And I have talked in the past, haven't I, when we're talking about when does music stop being music as a subject, and I always sort of say when it starts becoming sound effects, you know, when you know some people are having bright ideas about making a scene in drama and then adding a soundtrack to it, and what they do is actually sound effects. So what a great example Tom and Jerry is of the difference between music, which enhances the scene, and sound effects, which we can also hear. Let's have a listen to it, actually. And if you're watching, you can see it. There we go. Nice mixture of music and sound effects there. But the music, full orchestra, fully scored, absolutely brilliant music to fit the scene. It gets right out of the way, but could you imagine it without, with just the sound effects?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting agenda for listening point, isn't it? Because I've watched Tom and Jerry. I've obviously heard the music. I don't know whether I've ever actively listened to the music until just then.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been, if you'd asked me, is it a full orchestra? I absolutely wouldn't have known. But then listening to that then with a view to listening to the music,
Yeah.
I can really hear it.
Yeah, it's so cleverly done. We used to do a thing, I'm sure it's not original, we used to do a thing with the kids in school where we would play the opening of Jaws without any music, and it's not scary at all.
Yeah.
There is a YouTube, I don't know if it's still there's a video on YouTube where somebody's overdubbed it with the Skaters Waltz instead of the Jaws music. And then it just looks completely stupid and comical because you've got this person coming up and down in the sea, and this sort of enormous fish sort of splashing about, and it becomes completely comical.
A completely different thing. I remember being played the shower scene in Cyncoed, without any music and being asked to score it, to compose, without having known it, because obviously it's quite old. That must have been GCSE music.
Yeah,
but
Bernard Herrmann's score.
Yeah,
for Psycho. Yeah,
I love the artistry of film music. Christopher Nolan is the director who springs to mind, who always selects excellent composers to collaborate with that really capture a mood. Like Dunkirk has got some amazing music. It just really there'll be loads that spring to mind that are really memorable. The Batman movies, Inception, they've got just really memorable but stirring music. So
and a lot of these composers who are not well-known names, I mean, people probably haven't heard of Scott Bradley, but they're using the same techniques as a lot of much more famous composers. And actually a lot of really quite famous composers dabbled in film music writing. I mean, Bernard Herrmann was known as a composer in his own right. Obviously, William Walton wrote for film music. And these people were doing, very, very clever stuff. I think Bernard Herrmann used the sort of 12-tone serialist approach to composition in Psycho, which was a really sort of avant-garde thing at the time. So there's Scott Bradley, but I also want to give a word to the orchestra themselves. And I've got a little quote here from Andre Previn's memoir, which is called No Minor Chords. So Andre Previn he had many careers. He had enough careers, we'd have all been happy with one of them. He was known in his later years as a solo pianist and a conductor of various orchestras around the world. But prior to that, he had a career as an orchestrator in the studio system in Hollywood. And he writes a hilarious memoir about that and the sort of he was there at the tail end of the golden age of Hollywood and writes about the kind of crazy excesses and, you know, things like having to sort of create little metal brackets to screw the legs of peacocks down to sound stages so they wouldn't move, you know, without hurting the peacocks. You know, people doing that, you know, finding black swans by the next day, all that kind of thing. Absolutely crazy. But he worked in the orchestration section, and he says this about the orchestra. The truth is, I was nothing more exalted than a craftsman, and the people I came to cherish and respect most in my Hollywood years were all consummate masters of their craft. It's always easier to write a bad review than a good one. It's always easier to deride a performance than to praise it. By the same standards, it's infinitely funnier to recount Hollywood stories that are all about incompetence, illiterates, and phonies. God knows there's a cast of thousands of them, but they were always artists and technicians of enormous talent, artistic integrity, and amazing knowledge. In the years I spent in the film business, every studio had a music department with contract composers, arrangers, librarians, and copyists. So they were the people like handwriting all the scores and the parts onto staves. Also, every studio had its own contract orchestra of approximately 75 players. They were musicians whose provenance included the world's great symphony orchestras and America's best dance bands. It's often been remarked that the sight-reading abilities of these orchestras was legendary, and I have to add my voice to that existing chorus. These players were genuinely amazing. They would show up each morning, utterly unaware of what it was they were expected to record that day. It could have been a score by Alex North or Bernard Herrmann or David Raksin, or just as easily a Tom and Jerry cartoon or a dance number for Fred Astaire. They would casually glance at the parts on their stands, the ink still wet, and would proceed to play with the same expert disdain a professional parking lot attendant uses to back a new convertible into a tight space. It was a daily exhibition of the highest technical proficiency, and no one who witnessed it will ever forget it or disclaim it. The fact the music might have been second-rate or even 10th-rate had no bearing on its degree of difficulty, but I never saw any of these instrumentalists come unglued. I suppose the closest to their particular talents are the various symphony orchestras in London, whose schedules are a combination of overwork and ridiculously low salaries, thus making it imperative that as little time is spent on rehearsals as humanly possible.
Wow.
So yeah, they used to turn up and play that stuff, like what we just listened to. It had just been written, and they play it. They'd look at it, and they'd play it.
It's phenomenal, really. Phenomenal.
And they play it to the pictures as well, of course.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering actually.
Yeah.
So it would be playing in real time, and then the conductor would have seen the footage beforehand, maybe?
I don't know.
Busk in it,
but
like at the same time?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, there definitely is the system where orchestras will be there with, you know, these days, click tracks and headphones and things like that, but with a big screen, and they'll be watching and they'll be doing it to time.
Because it's quite precise, isn't it?
Absolutely precise, yeah.
Wow.
And that's a very different skill, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the sort of skill of being able to rehearse and play an instrument, and then you've got the sight reading, and then you've got the sort of responding to an image as well, to be kind of a master at all of those things. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And British orchestras, it's true, British orchestras are well known for their sight reading abilities because there's no money in the arts in Britain. I mean, I used to dabble on the fringes of professional or sort of semi-pro orchestral playing, and it is true, you would turn up in the afternoon, you might have a 3-hour rehearsal, but the concert might be 3 hours long. So you're not practicing anything. You're going to run some of it. Some of it you're probably not going to touch, not see till the night, and you don't know who you're working with till you all turn up on the day.
I always think this is quite interesting in, you know, shows like Bake Off, where they have very different types of challenges, don't they?
Yeah.
So there are some where it's like full-blown creative, but they can practice. And then you've got the technical challenge where you turn up and you sight read a recipe and you don't know how to make it. And I've sort of always kind of questioned a little bit, like, does it matter? Like, are there ever scenarios where you're sort of asked to do something completely off the cuff? And you can imagine a world where there's a musician who's maybe not the best sort of performer, like they wouldn't be selling out Carnegie Hall for their kind of solo performance, but actually they're just a really brilliant sight reader and they're able to do that better than perhaps another.
Yeah, I may have brought this anecdote to the podcast before, but I sat in an orchestra once next to a guy that worked in Abbey Road. And I remember saying to him, have you lost loads of work to Eastern Europe? Because I'd read a thing about how film production was moving to Eastern Europe. I said, have you lost loads of your soundtrack recording? He said, we lost it for a bit. Because obviously the Eastern European studios and orchestras cost loads less money per hour. But he said then it all came back because they realised that they had to do so many takes and have so many rehearsals that it ended up more expensive. Whereas if they book out Abbey Road and get a bunch of people who freelance, you know, who normally play in like the LSO or the London Phil, they'll do it in one take or maximum 2.
Yeah, it's a false economy, isn't it? Like, better to do it once, do it better, than have to do it 10 times.
Yeah, I think the Bake Off contestants tend to know where their niche is and where they excel, like, and it tends to stay reasonably consistent. It's funny you should mention Bake Off because
another podcast fixture is sailing in our direction.
So I'm a big fan of comfort eating with Grace Dent.
The podcast, not the thing.
My authentic whole self really enjoys comfort eating on the sofa. I plan to bring that into work from now on. You will find me eating corn snacks in the corner of the room while someone's leading a meeting.
Some challenging podcast edits.
So back in 2024, there was a comfort eating Christmas special with Grace Dent, and one of her guests was Nadia Hussain, Great British Bake Off winner from 2015. Christmas is obviously all about family traditions, and in this very little extract, Nadia is telling Grace about one of hers.
Because it's my birthday on Christmas Day, my dad would come home and he would wake us up in the middle of the night and say, come on, I've got turkey for you. And we'd sit there and we'd eat this cold turkey. And it just became a tradition to just sit there in the middle of the night on Boxing Day, early in the morning, and just have turkey and cold Bombay potatoes. And that's
downstairs round the table.
Downstairs on the floor,
in your pyjamas.
In your pyjamas, just sat there like a bit dishevelled, half awake.
A bit of hair, pillow creases.
Yeah, dishevelled, half awake, half naked, sat there eating this turkey. And then my mum would say, why do you do this every single year? I don't want them to break their sleep. I want them to have a full night's sleep. And Dad would just like ignore my mum as he does. And then we just sit there and eat it. And then we'd just go up to bed, and Mum would say, brush your teeth, and we'd never brush our teeth, and we'd just go straight to bed.
I love it.
They were some of the happiest moments.
That's it. A little bit niche, but everyone has them. Everyone has these sort of Christmas traditions. And I set you a little bit of homework. I asked you to bring your Christmas comfort food. Now, she makes a really important stipulation on this podcast that this is not about haute cuisine. This is about the thing, she says it in her intro, that you cobble together to eat on the sofa when you just need a big hug in a dish. So I see tinfoil shrouded items. I certainly have a few bits and bobs to set up down here.
And
but
we are fully clothed, just to...
We are fully
listeners in
clothed,
audio.
just in case you're worried. Sian, would you like to unveil what you've brought for us and tell us the story behind it?
So I was thinking, when I'm not at home for Christmas, what is the one thing that I always make sure that we have? Because I think, like, I'm going to assume there's going to be turkey and things like that.
Yeah.
But a kind of slightly more niche thing that we would always have in my family Christmas.
Oh, so you mean when you're going to somebody else?
We're going to somebody
for
else's
Christmas,
house and they say, is there anything in particular that you want? I would always insist, and it is a little bit bougie. Is bougie the word?
Yeah.
Are we ready? But it is smoked salmon and cream cheese on a blini. So like a mini pancake. So we would eat these, and it's on a Christmas plate, listeners, because I've really committed. We would eat these as a little starter.
Yeah.
So as, you'd have maybe a Bucks Fizz, maybe a champagne.
Yeah.
You'd have your blinis. They've got black pepper and a squeeze of lemon on as well. And these would be sort of handed around before the turkey dinner. And the very first year that I was ever away from home for Christmas, because we've always been kind of we're in Cardiff, we're at home for Christmas family.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law, because I was at my in-laws' house, asked what I should bring, what she should buy, and this was the thing that I said. And every year since then, she religiously buys vast amounts of smoked salmon that I then struggle to eat because nobody else in my husband's family eats it. But I really appreciate the effort. So here we go. Are we a fan?
Totally on board with that.
Yeah. Great, brilliant.
Wow. And also blinis, they get sold out really quickly at Christmas, don't they?
That's true. I was glad I was able to find some.
Wow.
I made blinis one year. They took most of a day.
So I did consider that. I thought if I can't find them,
that's a serious commitment.
If I
to
can't
the
find them,
podcast.
maybe I should make them. But then luckily,
They're
the
one
supermarket.
of those things I made once.
Were they quite hard? Because they're like mini pikelets or crumpets, as we call them
It's
in
just
Wales.
one of
Yeah,
those. How have they survived the trip into work?
They've
Are
done
they
all right, actually.
I'm
They've
gonna
done all
go
right.
for it then.
They are not lemons because I thought that might make it soggy.
Yeah.
But
It's
I've
more-
got lemon in my
yeah.
bag.
It's more the time, lots of like rising and proving and sitting for hours waiting for things to happen is the thing. Right. Well, I'm going to be eating this while you open that mysterious looking bottle.
I've got a few things here, and your jaw's going to hit the floor in a minute. Okay, so I'll just I've actually gone to the trouble of bringing some nice coupes,
Emma's pulling out glassware from her Mary Poppins bag.
some nice little champagne coupes. However, we're recording this it's now 11:20 in the morning, so I haven't gone as far as to bring some champagne, which would be
This goes very well with my blinis.
a little
I'm
bit
gonna say.
extra. Well, it's funny you should say that, Sian, because one of mine, and this is blood orange juice that I'm pouring into here, which is, I'd never buy it day to day because it's ridiculously expensive, but it's pretty good stuff. It's kind of sharper than regular orange juice. So you've each got a bit of this. Now, one of our morning traditions, which has developed since I've been with my husband, is that I always get up first. And for some reason, I've gotten into the habit of putting on, because, obviously his influence, Radio Island, or what is it? RTE Radio. And I make blinis.
Have you got some with you? Oh my goodness.
However, last Christmas, we were in Northern Ireland with my husband's family and couldn't find blinis for love nor money.
What is she about to reveal? There's a plate. It's covered in foil.
And I thought, I am certainly not going to go to the trouble of. I'm not.
No.
I just thought
It's
if
one of
I
those things
mess
you try
this
once
up,
and you're
yeah.
like, no.
And I just thought if I mess it up, then we can't have them.
No.
I also had them on the morning of my wedding because I love them so much. They're quite light. Okay, so because in the absence of making my own blinis and finding blinis, I tried putting them on wheaten bread instead. So here we have.
We've got a salmon overload going on here.
I know. And I've got
You've
some...
managed to bring your lemon with you.
I went to the trouble of making some nice little lemony twirls here, to make this look nice and pretty. So an Irish kind of riff on a traditional Bellini is that you can put it on some nice Irish wheaten bread. You can get it in most supermarkets in the UK. And bit of Philadelphia, some fresh chives, and some salmon. So wow, that was a fluke.
This
you
is
were
shaping
worried
up
this would
to be-
happen. Who
I
thought it
was
would have
worried.
happened here?
Yeah.
We're shaping up to have a lovely seafood feast.
Yeah.
Yeah, not from me though. No, not from me. Shall we have
yeah,
some
should we
blood?
do a little cheers?
Shall we?
Merry
Shall we
Christmas.
ching? Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Well,
Oh yeah,
now
that
for
is
something
lovely.
completely
Good stuff,
different.
isn't it?
Have you brought the pudding, Tom?
No. Well, in a manner of speaking, not something anyone's going to want to eat. So I thought I'm going to have to come
Thank you, Tom.
at this left field now.
Okay.
I've got to come at this left field because for a number of reasons, partly because I like to introduce a little bit of debate in these things, and partly because I've got to be honest, I'm not a sit on the sofa and graze on stuff all day person when it comes to the Christmas break. I'm more a, keep going with the square meals person. And I suppose the question that this is lining up for is there a sort of ritual, hopefully fairly good-natured standoff around food or debate that has to happen every Christmas?
Yorkshire puddings or no Yorkshire puddings?
You've done it. Have I? Oh. You've done it.
haven't brought Yorkshire puddings.
You haven't brought frozen Yorkshire puddings, have you?
Frozen.
No, I think he's made these.
Emma, oh, do
7 o'clock this morning.
Wash your mouth out, my child.
No Auntie Bessie's, no.
No one's going to want to eat these
I
because
want to eat a Yorkshire pudding. I love
do
Yorkshire
too.
I
puddings.
made these at 7:30 this morning. They've been sitting in a tin.
Wow.
That's only like 4
they're
hours
not-
ago.
They are not crisp. Look at the way they flop.
I would
now.
still
They
get-
are
I'd have a
rubbery,
go
but
on that. I'll
let
have
me
a go
stick
on
them on the
that.
table because, of course, Yorkshire pudding is traditionally served with a beef roast,
Yes.
and therefore there is a good when you do your Christmas tour, and we go to my mum's and my dad's.
Yeah.
And there is the ritual, good-natured Christmas meal standoff of, I'm not going to be making Yorkshire puddings with oh, yes, you are. But no, actually,
yeah.
I am actually. Let's not make out that I make my mum make extra trimmings. But yeah, there's we don't need Yorkshire puddings. We've got all these other. No, we do. No, we do. We have to have Yorkshire puddings. With
Yeah.
Christmas
What's
dinner.
yours, Sian?
Well, so my poor mother-in-law she has to buy smoked salmon for me, her, pretentious daughter-in-law. And then my brother-in-law, who's also joined the family, insists on a Yorkshire pudding.
Got to.
So now she has to make Yorkshire puddings as well.
Yeah, it's like, how many trimmings do you need with it? Because I could also, there are a number of debates of this nature when we go round to my parents of, we don't need this as well. It's like, yes, we do. I'll make it. It's fine. And then you end up with like 58 things on the plate.
I've got another one. Bacon,
Okay.
sausages,
Yeah.
pigs in blankets.
Yes.
I would say you need all of those.
Yes.
But, right?
Separately and combined.
I'm veggie. I'm veggie, and I say yes.
But like, some people don't think that. Some people are like, oh, well, I've got sausages wrapped in bacon, pigs in blankets. So I've done the bacon and the sausage. No. There's something very special about the bacon that's been on the turkey. That's like absorbed.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
You need the 3 things separately, in my opinion. That's a
Not
hill that I will die on.
Yeah, not a pig in blanket fan around here. We go with the slightly more out there bacon wrapped around stuffing.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, which is another thing that tries to be removed from the
Tom,
plan
that is
and
absolutely.
gets put back on.
I've literally never heard of that. And
Yeah.
Christmas is cancelled.
Yeah. You've been cancelled.
Well, I'll make it all better because mine's quite niche, but it's something I encourage you all to try. If you're a fan of Yorkshire pudding,
Yes.
this is just going to turbocharge any roast dinner ever. Okay. It's called Pine Pud because it's named after my great granny Pine. Her surname was Pine.
Ooh.
But it's like a traditional northern suet pudding. So it's the same ingredients as you'd use for like dumplings. So you need suet. You can get vegetarian suet or beef suet. You need self-raising flour. And I think it's 1 part suet to 2 parts self-raising flour, bit of salt and water.
Yeah.
Just those ingredients. You want it reasonably wet. You want like a flan dish. And you want to get the oil really, really hot in it, much like when you're making Yorkshire puddings. Then you put that suet and flour mix and water mix into that hot oil into the oven for about 20 to 30 minutes. It will rise and be fluffy, crispy on the outside, fluffy on the inside, to die for. So for us, there has to be pine pud with everything, every dinner, every roast dinner.
Wow.
Has to be.
Okay, I'm going to do it this year.
Try it.
I'll be texting you Christmas Eve. What was that you said about?
Yeah, really, really
Pine
good stuff. So there you have it.
Very nice. Lots of blinis, lots of salmon, and I've got Yorkshire puddings. I think this is
It's not a
veritable
balanced
feast.
meal we've got.
there's a slight class coding thing going on here as well. I brought a tin of floppy Yorkshire puddings, but not frozen ones.
But not frozen ones. That's
It looks
a
like
very
an
good
Emma
point.
Bridgewater tin, though. So,
Yeah,
you
it
know.
does look a bit fancy.
There we are. Fancy tin. Yeah, proletarian internals.
Well, we hope you've had and or having a very lovely Christmas break. Wishing you all the very best for the new year. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with you after Christmas.
You've been listening to Emma and Tom Talk Teaching, a Christmas podcast about, quite frankly, a load of random stuff, presented by Emma O'Dooher, Sian Wickersham and Tom Breeze. We hope you enjoyed it, or at least it made the Christmas washing up go a little bit quicker. Podcast artwork is by Beth Blandford and the music is by Cameron Stewart. We'll be back in a fortnight with something more sensible. Until then, take care, enjoy teaching, and Merry Christmas.